Okay, today we are at the last video for the entire school year, so gear up, get that pencil ready, and we're going to begin. Today's lesson is called Measure of Data Distribution, and your learning target is summarizing and describing the distribution of data, which means how far apart the data is spread and where the center is, things that we've been talking about in the last couple of weeks. Your I can statement: I can describe the shape of the data in line plots, histograms, and box plots.
All right, so we've got some vocabulary to get started with. The distribution of a data is the arrangement of the data values. Are they all clumped together? Are they spread out? How evenly are they spread out? Data is symmetric when the left side looks like the right side. So a symmetric shape. Both halves of it look the same. A cluster is data that's grouped together, so a whole bunch of data values that fall in a short little range. A gap is a number that doesn't have a data value. A peak is the most frequently occurring value, or the mode. So like on a line plot, we would look for where does it fall, or where do we have the highest point in our graph. And then skew. Skew talks about the shape of it. It's a distribution that is not symmetric, so it's not evenly drawn. So go ahead and jot these two little graphs down, and we're going to do a quick little sample of what skewed left means. Skewed left means the data on the left-hand side is spread out. So it's kind of spread out on the left and then all clumped together on the right. Skewed right means the data is clumped together on the left, but then kind of spread out on the right-hand side. So kind of the clump of data is on the opposite side from the name. When it's skewed left, there's not a lot on the left. It all got pushed to the right.
All right, example one. We're going to take a look at a line plot that has to do with quiz scores. It looks like the lowest point value that it was awarded on this quiz was 17, and the highest quiz score available was at 23. So we're going to go ahead and put that in a sentence. The quiz scores range from 17 to 23. It's always good to start your description off with a main idea, giving that person a visual of what the graph looks like without actually having the graph in front of them.
Oh. Our next one is there's a cluster from 17 to 19 points. So they're kind of grouped together here. And then there's another cluster from 21 to 23. You're kind of describing where the groups of numbers are. Go ahead.
Okay, the mode for this graph is really easy to tell. There's 4 x's on 23, so we can write down there is a peak at 23 points.
There is a gap between 19 and 21. You'll notice in between those there are no data values, so that would be considered a gap.
And finally, we need to talk about our data being symmetrical or not symmetrical. It doesn't have the same on each side, so our data is not symmetric. And just like Mr. McKenzie just said, it is skewed to the left, which means it's farther apart on the left than it is on the right. And you kind of make that bell curve looking thing skewed to the left. Chunk. All right, the last thing to point out is the fact that this quiz score line plot has no outliers. So the data should really be centered around the mean or the median at best.
Okay. Notice for each one of these we wrote a simple sentence, not just a couple of words, but an actual sentence describing each one of these pieces of information. That's what a good description is of your data. So now we're going to do a box plot. If you remember from our lesson on box plot, when we draw it out, we can see our medians, our quartiles, but we don't know where each individual data value fell. So we can't describe where there's a gap or a cluster because we're not sure, is there a 13, is there a 12? We don't know from our box plot. What we can describe are the things that do fall into our box plot here. So we can start with our range. The number of books read ranged from 9 on the low end all the way up to 35. The median, the middle, is 15. Remember, that's what goes in the middle of the box. Quartile 1 falls at 11, and quartile 3 is at, that should say 17, sorry. Okay. Then their interquartile range is 8, which now I have to change to 6. Sorry about that. And then we have an outlier at 35 books read, that one way out there by itself. And then our last one is we need to describe the shape as soon as it stops scrolling on me. The data is not symmetric. You notice the upper half is closer together while it's more spread out on the lower half. So we say that it is not symmetric.
All right, for example number 3, we are looking at another box plot. This time we're on text messages sent. You can start off your sentence with the text messages sent range from 5 messages to 45 messages.
You could say your median, that's our middle number, is at 25. Your first quartile is at 10, and your third quartile is at 40.
This gives you an interquartile range of 30. And then you can start to look at the shape of this box plot. This is a pretty symmetrical box plot, which means that the right half of the box is equal to the left half of the box, and that median is directly down the middle. Even if you look at the whiskers, you see that the whiskers are both 5 apart from the quartile 3 and the quartile 1 down on the lower half of the data.
So this would be a great example of something that is symmetric. Both the left and right hand sides look exactly the same for us. All right, the last two are for you. Again, complete sentences. You should have at least 4 or 5 different sentences for each one of these describing it. You should be having a sentence about, are there any clusters and where are they located? What's the range? Are there any gaps or peaks to the data? And then are there any outliers or something that looks like it could be an outlier in your data? Then one good sentence to finish it up. Is your data symmetric? Is it skewed? Which direction might it be skewed? But you should have a separate sentence for each one of those pieces of information.
Go back to your notes and figure out which one is skewed left and skewed right as you write that last sentence.